And I'll close with that for tonight. For 50 years in this country, over 50, it has been taboo to question capitalism. It wasn't before 1945. Let me make sure you all get that. Before 1945, it was commonplace in the United States to question and criticize capitalism. In the early part of the 20th century, there was something called the American Socialist Party. It had a leader, Eugene Victor Debs, was the head of the Railway Workers Union, and that was the basis for the building of the Socialist Party. He got 1 million votes for president in 1912, I think it was. No? 1908 or 16? He was in jail at the time. He was in jail as the head of the Socialist Party, got 1 million votes. That'd be the equivalent to getting, I don't know, 5 or 10 million now. He got 1 million votes as a jailed socialist. That's how strong the support was. For those of you that don't know, hundreds of people were elected as socialists to state legislators. Hundreds of socialists were mayors of American cities. Most famously, Milwaukee, for years had socialist mayors. Bridgeport, Connecticut, for years had socialist mayors. You may be surprised to know that the state that had the most socialists in its state legislature was Oklahoma. Yeah, I didn't think you would have known that. You probably wouldn't have guessed it either. Socialism was very popular. Then in the 1930s, with the Great Depression, it really zoomed. We had two socialist parties. One, the old American Socialist Party founded by Debs, and the other one, basically a Trotskyite socialist party called the Socialist Workers' Party. And we had the American Communist Party, and they were big and they were powerful. And they worked hand in glove with the CIO, the Congress of Industrial Organizations, and working together, they organized millions of Americans into unions. It was the greatest union drive in the middle of the 1930s. In the depths of the Depression, millions of people joined unions. We never had a union drive like that before. We've never had one since. It's the high point of American labor. Organized by socialists and communists who were often the leaders of the process of organizing people into trade unions. It was possible in those days to talk about what's wrong with capitalism. It was the basis for people joining a union, which they often saw as an institution that could help move society beyond capitalism. So powerful was this idea that it produced that coalition. And indeed, this is what I'm going to talk about when I speak in Berkeley on the 29th of October at the Living New Deal event. It was so powerful in the 1930s that it could go to the president, Mr. Roosevelt, and have that famous conversation. Dear Mr. Roosevelt, it's the depths of the Depression. Millions of Americans have no work, no income, no food on the table. You're the president. You've got to do something. You've got to do something. We're the unions, the CIO. We're telling you, you've got to do something. And then the socialists and the communists stood up and they said to Mr. Roosevelt, we agree with the unions. You've got to do something. But we got a little extra kicker. If you don't, there's going to be a revolution here, just like they had in Russia. Mr. Roosevelt took the message back to the corporate leaders and the rich people. He knew them real well because he was one of them. And he told them what had happened. And he said, I believe it. These people are well organized. They have organized millions of people when no one thought they could do it. Under the worst conceivable circumstances, they did it. To ignore what they're telling us and to ignore the threat would be stupid. I implore you, leaders of industry and rich people, you've got to give me, this is important for you, you've got to give me the money to take care of the mass of desperate people. And I advise you to do it, because if you don't, there'll be a revolution and you're not going to have any money to give anybody ever again. Your choice. He split them. Half thought he was crazy. It was all a bluff. Those became the Republican Party. Oh, no, that's who they are. And they have been that ever since. The other half agreed. And with half of the rich people and the corporations, Roosevelt went back to the unions and the communists and the socialists and said, I think we got a deal. I will take care of the mass of people, and I'll make them pay for it. But you got to stop talking about revolution. You got to leave capitalism alone. You got to be grateful that we're going to take care of the people. Done, said the socialists and the communists. You got a deal. And they shook. Immediately, Roosevelt created the Social Security system to take care of old people, the unemployment compensation system to take care of the unemployed people, passed the first minimum wage the country ever saw, and hired 15 million unemployed people to work for the federal government. Unbelievable. And he did it with money he took, you're going to love this, from the corporations and the rich. In 1945, for every dollar the federal government raised income tax on individuals, it raised $1.50 in income tax on corporate profits. Today, for every dollar the federal government raises income tax on us, it gets from corporations 25 cents. Tax burden shifted from corporations onto people. The reverse of what happened in the 30s. The undoing of the New Deal. In 1944, the same President Roosevelt sends a message, State of the Union speech to Congress. He proposes that the top income tax rate on individuals, on richest individuals, will be, ready, 100%. Every dollar over $25,000 any American would earn, the government would take every bit of it. It's a maximum income law proposed by the president. Sent to the Congress, the Republicans go ballistic, their specialty. They go ballistic, yelling and screaming, the usual theater, and a deal was finally reached. And the top income tax bracket on the richest people, every dollar over $25,000 you earn then be about $380,000 today. Every dollar over $25,000, you gave Uncle Sam 94 cents, you got to keep 6. And that was the rule, 90+%, in the 1940s, in the 1950s, and in the 1960s. It was endorsed by Republican and Democratic presidents alike, and Republican and Democratic Congresses. Nobody dared say boo. In the 1930s, because of the movement from below, of angry people, we taxed the rich and the corporations to take care of the mass of people. It worked. It worked really well. And was it a political death sentence for the politician who dared to do it? On the contrary, Mr. Roosevelt was elected 4 times. He's the most popular president in the history of the country. That's why when he died, they passed a law you could never again have more than 2 terms. That's why Obama's done now. He can't run again. Amazing what people can do if they understand. For 50 years, they squashed this coalition. They squashed it by demonizing communists, demonizing socialists, and destroying the labor movement. That's why in this great recession since 2008, we don't have a New Deal movement. We don't have the pressure from below. We got to start all over again. But at least we should know our history. It'll make starting over a lot easier and the progress to where we have to get a lot quicker. That's why it's so important that Mr. Reich and Mrs. Clinton felt the need to defend. Without understanding it, they strengthened the concept and the consciousness in the American people that this is a system about which its leaders have to worry saving it. Now that's progress for us. Thank you very much.